Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our expert panel session on refugee claimants, gaps and resources for equitable access to employment. That's a mouthful, but yeah. And that too on a Monday morning on Eclipse Day. I know not to schedule it this way, but this was the first event that I scheduled, and I was like, okay, this is Monday morning. But with that, like I see a lot of people joining in, so thank you for doing that. Please note that the session is being recorded and it will be put up. It would be uploaded on our YouTube channel as well as our website. So at the end of the session, we will ask for your feedback on an evaluation form. So we request you to please add your feedback, your thoughts, as they really help us guide the focus of our session and make them better. My name is Farheen Miraj, and I am the Employment and Labor Market Coordinator here at Toronto Local Immigration Partnership, or also known as TNLIP. At TNLIP, we have been working with over 70 newcomers serving and cross-sector organizations in North York to enhance settlement, health, and employment experiences of newcomers in the Toronto North community since 2012. LIPs do not provide direct service, but instead build social capital and resiliency of communities by supporting strategic local planning with a range of stakeholders. This particular panel is the result of our members at TISC task group. So we have a small task group that is short for temporary foreign workers, international students, and refugee claimants, which is the main focus of today. My co-host, Serna Stambuk, is the manager of Toronto North LIP. Before moving on to our speakers, I want to acknowledge the land that we are situated on. So I'm going to move on to our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we are situated is the traditional land of the Anishinaabes, including Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. TNLIP is committed to advancing collaboration with Indigenous people in the work that we do, specifically in the settlement sector. Through continued learning and engagement, we strive to build more meaningful partnerships between Indigenous and newcomer communities for generations to come. Now, let's move on to the photos of our wonderful speakers today. It's, as you can see, it's a wonderful panel. We have Daryl Pinto, who's the Director of Employment at Jumpstart Refugee Talent, Malini Singh, the Manager of Newcomer Support Services at the Neighbourhood Organization, short for TNO. Jennifer Rajashekar, Manager of Social Support Services at TNO, Menas Chenoy, Community Services Supervisor, ESU, at the Toronto District School Board, or TDSB. Claudia Bargelini, Manager of Employment Services at Working Skills Center. Vanessa Parodi, Coordinator Healthcare Connections at Access Employment. And Monica Ann Brennan, Associate Director of the IEP Bridging Programs at York University. So, of course, you're going to hear more about them as we move on to our different slides. Now, this is a huge star-studded panel. I've got my eyes on the clock and a gentle grip on the gravel. So let's keep the presentations to a sharp 7 minutes or 8. Or well, you get me. My co-host, Serna Stambuk, who is the manager of TNLIP, has over 20 years of experience in supporting newcomers and internationally trained professionals to relaunch their careers in Canada. So Serna, why are we doing this event considering that Toronto North LIP is actually officially not mandated to serve refugee claimants? So why this topic?
Thank you. And thanks everybody for being here. Yes, we need a bit of an introduction to this topic. We are IRCC funded, and most IRCC funded services, although not service providers. We're not direct services, but IRCC also does not generally serve refugee claimants. However, over the last year, to say the least, we have been hearing from our council members both in employment services and in settlement services, that they're seeing a continuing a rise in the number of requests for service from ineligible clients, and it is putting significant pressure on their staff. They're handling it in a number of different ways. However, one thing that is lacking is an awareness of what refugee claimants can and cannot access across the spectrum of settlement services. In other words, what they're eligible for, and what would be some useful referrals to make when an ineligible client comes to a settlement or employment or language service provider. So for this reason, we have convened this panel, and we'll provide a little bit of contextual information as to why are we seeing so many refugee claimants right now in Toronto. So first of all, globally, we are seeing unprecedented, in fact, highest level of displacement on record worldwide, with 114 million individuals displaced. That doesn't mean they're all internationally displaced. Sometimes they're displaced within their own countries, but the level of human displacement globally is at unprecedented levels. Also, Canada signed, in fact, expanded the Safe Third Country Agreement with US. The Safe Third Country Agreement simply states that the person making a refugee claim must do so in the first of the two safe countries that they enter. So you probably remember Roxham Road. Roxham Road is a small rural road in that crosses Quebec border from US, where a large number of refugee claimants were making their crossing into Canada. The Safe Third Country Agreement did not apply to the border prior to 2023. I believe that's when it was amended. It only applies to ports of entry. However, that was amended, and now the Safe Third Country Agreement applies to any border crossing. Mind you, only land crossings. So water crossings are still, I think, not covered, which may increase the number of people coming into Canada by water. Nevertheless, Canada sees only 2% of the globally displaced refugees. So the numbers are still small, and that's partly because of Canada's geography. But for Canada and Canada's, for more local infrastructure, those numbers are still significant. So one of the things that happened with Roxham Road is that claimants were coming into Quebec, and if you remember, there was a lot of pushback from Quebec in terms of not being able to sustain those numbers. And the federal government then stepped in to literally transport a lot of these refugee claimants from Quebec to other parts of Canada to ease the pressure on Quebec. So even though the numbers globally, in a global sense, are small, they are putting significant pressure on the support systems that exist, or in some cases do not exist, within provinces and municipalities in Canada. So nevertheless, I'm mentioning the Safe Third Country Agreement because it's changed how refugee claimants are coming into Canada, but it did not necessarily decrease the numbers. So claimants started to make more and more claims at ports of entry. So those are generally airports. And so, for example, Montreal saw a rise from, I think it was some 300 per year to over 29,000 claims at the airport in Montreal in 2023. Oh, sorry, this is a mistake. It's not 3,325. No, that is correct. Yeah, 3,325 were made in 2022 and that increased by, you can see, almost 1,000% within 1 year. Same happened in Canada and in Ontario. The numbers of claimants increased from 22 to 2024, increased by 100% in Canada and in Ontario. And the greatest increase in refugee claims has been from African countries. 375% increase in number of refugee claims in African countries in 2023, because that's from 2022 to 2023, that's the data we have. If you go to the next slide, I'll provide a little bit more information about the context. Also, I should mention that the greatest number of refugee claims are still made from Middle Eastern countries. In Canada, however, that has been a consistent trend. That is not an increase. There's not been a significant increase. The increase has been from African countries. And we have information about which African countries, and I think Daryl will talk about that as well in a bit. But the other part of the context is that refugee processes are governed by federal law, by federal government. But once in the country, refugees are not in Canada. They are in a specific province and they're in a specific city. And that has led, as you've seen in the news, to confusion, to put it mildly, about who is responsible for the immediate needs that these refugee claimants have. So also, to put it in perspective, 40% of all immigrants in Canada live in Ontario, while 66% of all claimants live in Ontario. So Ontario gets a, let's say, disproportionate share of claimants in comparison with other Canadian provinces. Because refugees are fleeing life-threatening situations, they often arrive with very little financial resources and may, and I'm saying may, because it's not always the case. We should not presume that. However, we should be prepared for it, that they will require help with housing and income. But this is not only due to the situations they're fleeing, but also to the refugee claim process. So if we go to the next slide, I talk a little bit about the refugee claim process. Refugee claim process takes on average 2+ years from the moment that a person submits the claim. Now, there's a lot of information about the process of submitting a claim. And so here, think about people submitting a claim in a couple of different ways. So there's 2 different ways to submit a claim. You can, at the airport, immediately as you come to the gate that says, "Welcome to Canada," and this is what me and my family did 30 years ago, you can say, before they stamp your passport, that you're claiming an asylum in Canada. And that is called making a claim at the port of entry. So you are arriving with something like a visitor status or a visa, and then making your intent and your real situation known at the border or at the port of entry. From that moment onwards, it's over 2 years for your claim to be decided upon, for Canada to determine whether you are a valid claimant, rather your claim should be honored and you should be given a protected status in the country, or you should be deported back, or rather your claim does not have legitimacy in the eyes of Canada. So the other way of making a claim is by coming into the country, so getting through the airport or port of entry, with whatever status you have. So, for example, you coming as a visitor because you have a visitor visa, and you come in to Toronto. Maybe you go to an Airbnb, or maybe you go stay with family, whatever your situation is. But in a few days' time, you go to an inland office. Now, this used to be so in my days. However, now all this is done online. So you can, this is called an inland claim. You submit your claim when you already are in Canada, not at the port of entry. And there are some differences in what happens. So, for example, the moment that you make your claim, you are given the acknowledgement of claim, AOC, also known as the white paper. That paper states that you're in the process of making a claim, and it gives you access to certain things immediately, but does not give you access to many, many things at this point. If you make a claim at the border, you sort of skip that AOC step and are immediately issued with the refugee protection claimant document or the brown paper. Many of you who are in front lines are familiar with the brown paper. I had a brown paper for 3+ years, and that was my main piece of ID. And because we made a claim at the port of entry, we spent the night almost at the airport because that's how long it took for the interview to happen and for our mugshots to be taken. The refugee protection claimant document has a picture on it, which is literally almost a mugshot. It's taken in a similar manner and has fingerprints on it. And it states that you are a person who is a refugee claimant and that you're eligible to make the claim. The AOC says that you have begun the process, but it does not state whether you are eligible to make the claim. So if you're applying for a refugee claim inland, the time between you starting that process and getting your eligibility interview, which would give you the brown paper, can be it's 2+ months. So the clock starts ticking, and during those 2+ months, for example, one of the things that's difficult is enrolling children in school, because schools ask for the brown paper. So families that don't yet have the brown paper face some barriers in enrolling their children in school. So there's differences, right? So the time that it takes for claims and the experience of claimants early on in their journey is not just determined by what they're coming from or what they're fleeing, but also the systems that they're encountering when they land here, much of which is a mystery to them, right? My family was lucky to make a claim at the port of entry. And the reason my family did that is because of movies. We've seen movies in which political asylum claimants come to the airport and declare themselves to be asylum seekers. So that's what my family did. But again, there's not a lot of information about what is the best way to do things and what are the consequences of choosing one path over another. Once the refugee claimants have their brown paper, their refugee protection claimant document, they can apply for a work permit. However, the work permit takes over 4 months to get. So now if you made an inland claim, it's at least 6 months to probably under a year before you actually have a work permit in your hand. But during this time, you also have to live somewhere, you have to pay for your food, etc. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll finish up by just talking about what refugee claimants can and cannot do during those 2+ years during which they're waiting for their claim to be determined and decided upon. They can access legal aid for help with their claim. So that means a lawyer. Although due to the influx of claimants, there's a real challenge today in being able to find a lawyer that is available through legal aid to support. So technically, yes, there are lawyers that will support your claim and help you with the claim process, but there are just volume issues and supply issues of lawyers that through legal aid that will actually be able to be available to you in a timely manner, again, because of the volumes that we're seeing. You can enroll children in school during those 2+ years, but again, with a caveat, because many of the school boards are still asking for things like your cable bill or your, your utility bill, your lease agreement, which you do not have if you are a brand new claimant in the country for less than 2 months. You can receive social assistance and healthcare, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a subsequent slide. You can get a work permit, you can get a SIN number, and you can start working. And you can pay and file income taxes. In fact, you must pay and file taxes. And you can apply for and receive a child care subsidy. So for a place in a child care, if you require it, you can obtain that, again, depending on the availability, the wait time, the availability of subsidized spots, etc. But your status does not prevent you from applying for that. But you cannot attend post-secondary education without a study permit and paying international student fees. So this was my reality. When we arrived here, I was at the brink of turning 18. I was ready to go to university, but that was delayed by over 2 years because our future was uncertain, and my family certainly didn't have enough money to pay for international student fees for my education, nor did they know that this would be the reality. Monica will talk to us a little bit about some of the pathways that exist for accessing higher education, but as a rule, that is very, very prohibitive to claimants. Claimants cannot receive settlement and other services from IRCC funded programs. So, for example, link classes are not available to claimants, and Mahnaz will talk to us about some of the options that do exist through TDSB system for claimants to access some sort of training. They also cannot apply for Canada Child Benefit. Not right away. There is a required number of months of residence in the country before applying for it. So for many months, claimants cannot receive this benefit, and they also cannot vote, obviously. So those are some of the sort of what that reality of being a claimant looks like, given the legislative web that claimants step into when they make a claim in Canada. And I think that brings me to, okay, almost the end of what I want to talk about. I also want to talk about the fact that there's a lot of confusion of what a refugee actually is. So we call many different categories refugees. And you have a few of them up here on the slide. Privately sponsored refugees and government-assisted refugees are all called refugees. However, status-wise, they are not refugees, they're permanent residents. By experience and the reasons for coming to Canada, they are refugees. They are fleeing unsafe situations in their country. But due to the process through which they've arrived into the country, either being privately sponsored or assisted by the government, they are immediately issued a permanent resident status, which then gives them access to a whole host of services that claimants are not eligible for. So there's a need to really clarify our language as well. And it's important in the sector that when we talk about a refugee, we clarify exactly what do we mean in terms of their immigration status. We have then, I mentioned refugees, claimants who make their claims at the port of entry versus inland refugee claimants, and eventually those folks who make their claim, including some irregular claimants who come into the country irregularly, right? So not through a port of entry, but maybe crossing a border at a random place. They can become convention refugees or protected persons. And those are those who have been deemed to be to have a valid claim, and they're allowed to stay in Canada. And now they become eligible for IRCC funded services, but not before that. And then we have a new category that's emerged recently, which is the Canadian-Ukrainian Authorization for emergency travel holder. Now, we call people coming from Ukraine due to war Ukrainian refugees. However, they are not refugees, they're temporary residents who have been given access to services that convention refugees would normally have. But their status in the country is not that of residents. Convention refugees or protected persons are considered to have residence in Canada, and they still need to apply to get a permanent residence, but it's really an administrative process. There is nothing that needs to be, there's no uncertainty about receiving it. For Canadian Ukrainian authorization for emergency travel holders, they only have a temporary status. The intent of that visa is not to have long-term residence in the country. It is to have temporary residence and have access to a lot of services. So I'm bringing that complexity around language and actual statuses into the picture. Now, I wanted to also bring up the fact that Canada tracks information about which provinces claimants enter, by which pathways, and from which countries, diligently. However, there is not a lot of information out there about refugee claimants' education levels, skills, and professions. And this allows some misconceptions to prevail. And this is why I'm really happy to have Daryl with us. I just wanted to point out to the fact that all of the faces that you see here on this slide were once refugee claimants, some of them in Canada and some of them in US. And I would love to welcome Daryl or have Farheen welcome Daryl to tell us more about what they're seeing at Jumpstart about refugee claimants in terms of their skills, education, and diverse profiles.
Thank you so much, Surna. That was some really important context of what claiming refugee status process looks like. And you bring a lot of personal experience into it, as well as, discuss the recent changes in the landscape of this, subsection of immigrants. So yes, let's move on to what refugee claimants look like. And Daryl Pinto is the Director of Employment at Jumpstart Refugee Talent, and he brings a global perspective to creating employment pathways for refugees. With experience in strategic consulting and a strong commitment to community service, he's also co-chaired the National Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable. He's an advocate for inclusion and a voice on New Canadians TV. So Daryl, we often talk about refugees as a singular category, which can lead to many generalizations. Could you speak about the pitfalls of that and common misconceptions that it may lead to?
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you to Toronto Northlip for inviting me to be part of this panel. So I'm going to share my screen, and in the 10-minute agenda spot I have, I'm going to take half of it to watch a video with you. It really does provide, I think, a beautiful synopsis of misconceptions. And I'll come back to it after the video. So someone give me a thumbs up once I start playing this if you can hear the sound, okay?
My twin brother was asked to sing at his graduation last year, so I decided to one-up him and give a speech. He's actually graduating from his master's program next week, and both of us are continuing to grapple with the same question that everyone has been asking us: what are you going to do next? As I'm sure all of you have been asked the same exact question, what are you going to do? That's a very different question from who are you going to be? What I want us to consider is, what does it mean to be a human being, not a human doing? When I first came to NC State, I had a lot of labels that I was proud of: D1 athlete, softball player, researcher, social work student. If you were to ask me about my identity, I would have listed all of those tangible things. But during my junior year, I suffered a traumatic brain injury from softball. My career-ending concussion meant that softball was now forever over, and I was on the brink of even continuing as a student. I struggled to speak without frequent stuttering, pausing, confusion, and couldn't prove myself through performance of any kind. The external labels that I built my entire identity on were broken, crumbled to the core, and I was left with all of the pieces of who I used to be and unsure how to rebuild. So as I recovered for several months, I made a resolution to help rebuild my identity. I decided that in order to heal the way I saw myself, I had to start by the way that I saw and spoke about others. I would start describing people not by their labels, but by three things: their attitude, the way that they treat others, and what makes them uniquely beautiful. Instead of describing my roommate as an engineer, I would first tell you that she is a kind, intelligent, adventurous girl who loves her family deeply. The more I started equating other people's identities towards their internal characteristics, the more I began to build a healthier foundation for myself, seeing individuals and myself not for what they do, but who they really are. So, some of us have next steps planned out, and that's amazing, and some of us don't, and that's okay too. That just means that not all of us have an answer to the question of what are you going to do, yet we all have the opportunity to decide who we are going to be when we leave this place today. We can choose to be kind, ambitious, because who we are internally is the root of what we do and what we produce to the world. Your roles in life are going to change, whether it's a relationship role, a role in a job, but you are so much more than your role. So you might be going to do work in engineering, but that means you're going to be an intelligent problem solver. You might be going to do social work, but that means you're going to be a compassionate community member. Regardless of what you do, you always have the opportunity to be the person that you've dreamed when you choose a positive attitude, treat others with genuine kindness, and appreciate your own unique inner beauty. If you embrace those three things, your life will become more rich with seeing the world through a lens beyond the labels that confine us. I don't know everyone here, but there is one thing that I do know just from being here. We are resilient. Graduation isn't just a celebration of passing classes and balancing work. It's about doing all of those things despite the challenges in between. We have students here who are mothers raising children. We have students who are battling with illness, maybe working multiple jobs, maybe traveled across country or even across seas to be here. You are resilient, and the things that you do will go beyond your occupation because they start with an internal spark based on who you are. And that's not just the graduates either. It's our supportive community that helped us get here. You are resilient too, and we thank you for being here. All of you came in wearing several external labels: a graduate, a student, an almost alumni, maybe some alumni here, and I hope that you leave knowing that you will always be a member of the NC State Wolfpack. But we have to look beyond our labels to appreciate who we really are and appreciate others for who they really are. And because of that, I encourage all of us to think and do and become something uniquely amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so why did I share that? Jumpstart Refugee Talent is a national charitable organization. We focus only on employment and changing the narrative of what refugee talent is capable about. And refugee, the word refugee is a label that unfortunately has a negative stigma attached to it in the employer world. And Jumpstart is the business of changing that narrative and that lens about refugees, not as a risk, but as a talent opportunity. And I'm going to share some more slides with you about how we do that with our employment partners. And we currently have over 120 corporate relationships across Canada. So Shrina shared the complexity around what a refugee is, different statuses. At Jumpstart, we don't care. We don't care what status, immigration status you have. If you're a forcibly displaced person and you ended up here in Canada through any one of the pathways, we will serve you to look for meaningful employment. There's only 3 criteria that we have to intake a new client. One is, as I said, forcibly displaced through any one of the pathways. They have to speak English, a CLB level 6 or higher, or French, CLB level 6 or higher. That's important because employers look for talent that can at least communicate in the workplace. And because we're focused on the higher end of the spectrum of employment, entry level, yes, but also mid and senior level roles, we have to have this sort of minimum cutoff. We do not focus on survival jobs at all. So that's perpetuating, I think, the perception or the bias that refugees are only capable of these entry-level survival jobs. And last, they have to have a work permit. So, there is a wait time for these, and we understand that. But again, a Canadian employer will not take someone on without at least a minimum work permit, or they're a permanent resident, or they're a Canadian citizen. As long as they came to Canada as a forcibly displaced person, we will serve them. The next stat I want to share with you, and the contextual global numbers that Shrina shared, reflected in Jumpstart's intake numbers. The dark blue bar at the bottom refers to the number of refugee claimants that have come to Jumpstart to become clients over the last few years. And as a percentage of total intake at Jumpstart, that number, or that percentage, is growing from 24% in 2021 to a whopping 63% in the first quarter of 2024 alone. So the demand is definitely there. And as long as they have a work permit and CLB level 6, then we will happily serve them at Jumpstart. Where are they coming from? The box below shows you a map of the source countries of these refugee claimants that are coming to Jumpstart. They come from 64 different countries. The top 10 source countries, the number one country is Afghanistan, but 5 out of the 10 are African countries. And then there's Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, and Syria. Those are just the top 10 out of the 64. And you'll see from the map, the region that is the biggest source of refugee claimants is 50% of the intake of Jumpstart clients have come from African countries, with another third coming from the Middle East. Okay, so how do we position them as talent and not sort of a risky bet for an employer? Here on the right-hand side of the slide is a breakdown of some of the data we collect when we intake a new client. So education level. 2% of these refugee claimants have PhDs from their home countries, 26% have master's degrees, and almost half have bachelor's degrees. So if you're a Canadian employer thinking that this is a risky bet, it says right here that these are smart people. They're educated, mostly very few with just high school degrees or some post-secondary courses. 60% of them are male, about a third are female. Their CLB level, and again, this is an intake criteria, almost all of them speak really good English to be able to qualify them for a job in the Canadian workplace. And their age demographic, the largest bulk is about 2/3 between the ages of 31 to 49. Also another sweet spot for employers looking to hire talent. So the way we try and reposition this label of refugee to an employer who we're talking to is that we want to position them as a talent opportunity that is overlooked in the Canadian workplace. And we know many sectors are struggling to find Canadian talent, especially in the remoter communities. So Jumpstart really acts as a bridge between getting the refugee a fighting chance to be able to get an interview. Last year, of all the referrals that we sent from our clients down to our employers who were hiring at the moment, 30% of them ended up getting interviews. And of the ones that got interviews, 1/5 got hired. Now, that isn't perfect, but the labor market isn't perfect. A Canadian with experience or a new student graduating from a Canadian university will probably face the same odds when they're applying for jobs. So we're proud of the fact that we're able to, get a leg up for our refugee clients to get that interview, and then the rest is up to them as well as the employer. We will also try and prepare them for a Canadian-style interview should they get one of those, to, so that they can put their best foot forward. So that's all I have to share. Again, Jumpstart is in the business of finding meaningful, and I underline meaningful work for our refugee clients, as well as changing the Canadian narrative about refugees being not a risk, but a talent source.
Thank you so much, Daryl. That segment was really, including the video, it was really needed to influence a shift in our perceptions of refugees and changing the narratives as you phrased it. I know people are also interested in the video, so please do share the link in the chat, or I will also be sharing, via email the presentation with all the attendees, so I could also share the resource with them via email. I'm going to move on to the service overview, and let me just share my screen really quickly. So we acknowledge that the diverse profiles, as Daryl mentioned and Sarna also highlighted, and the unique challenges that refugee claimants face. Sarna, how do partnerships and documentation requirements impact their access to these essential services, such as access to income, shelter, housing, healthcare, and support their path to stable settlement and consequently employment?
Thank you, Farheen. And thank you again, Daryl, for that very, very insightful and inspiring presentation. Couple of things. I see that there's a lot of interest in Jumpstart Refugee, which I'm very happy to see. So encouraging everybody to please put your questions about anything that you hear that you're not clear about, you would like more clarification, in the chat. We have a lot of information to share with you today, and we don't want anything to get missed. At the end, we will have time for question and answer. We hope, although 2 hours seems like not a lot of time for what we want to cover. So in case that we don't, please do put your questions in chat as we go along, and we will make sure that we address them. Unfortunately, our colleagues from Toronto Employment Social Services were not able to be here today. So I will cover a little bit of information about shelter and basic needs and healthcare needs, or health access for refugee claimants. So in terms of shelter and basic needs, in Toronto, the total number of asylum seekers in the shelter system has multiplied by more than 500%. From 530 refugee claimants in shelter beds per night to 3,000 from September 2021 to May 2023, and the numbers are even higher now. Over 50% currently of clients in Toronto shelter system are refugee claimants. And this is indeed a crisis because there are not enough shelter beds. And you've been hearing about this in the news, and this story continues. We know that the churches and various faith communities stepped in to house the claimants. IRCC itself leases approximately 3,800 hotel rooms in 28 hotels, not all in Toronto, far from it, in 6 different provinces. And this houses approximately 7,000 claimants, but only 45,000 in Ontario. The province of Ontario, now in response to this crisis, the province of Ontario invested in Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit Program. You might have heard about this, COB. I will not talk a lot about it, but I just did want to say that it is one of the main tools that the City of Toronto currently has at their disposal to move people out of shelters into permanent housing. And stable housing, let's say, not permanent, because I can't even, many of us can't count on permanent housing at this point, but 30,000 households were able to be moved from shelters into stable housing through the COB program. The COB program is simply a portable benefit that allows folks who have experienced a certain number of months of homelessness, which is actually a requirement, to move into market rate housing by covering the cost of housing that they cannot cover themselves. So it basically pays for your rent up to a certain point based on your income, which would include Ontario Works income, and the average market rent in your area, and your actual rent that you would need to be paid. So through COB, yes, the COB ended at the end of March. Currently, there's no money right now in that pot of money. We're waiting to hear when both federal, because it is a Canada-Ontario benefit, right, would put additional money into this benefit, that the money has been spent. But with that money, 3,000 households in Ontario moved from shelters to stable housing, and 84% of them were refugee claimants, 75% of whom identified as Black. So there's definitely the racial theme to these numbers that also should not be neglected. I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of chat back and forth in the chat, and the people have had experience with COHB and the COB program, and there's some positive stories. These stats are, okay, so question, where are these stats from? These stats are from the information we get as Toronto North Lit through city community agency table, which city has convened in order to share up-to-date information on the refugee claimant situation in the city. So moving on to the next slide, we're looking at, let's see, Farheen, can you go to the next slide? Right. So just looking at understanding what impacts claimants' access to shelter and basic needs. And by basic needs, I mean basic income, having some financial assistance. So claimants access shelter space by calling the central intake line at City of Toronto. But they access Ontario Works through an online application. Central intake line at City of Toronto is a municipal service. Ontario Works is a provincial benefit, which is administered through a municipality, so through Toronto Employment Social Services. In order to apply for Ontario Works, claimants need at least an acknowledgement of claim, and I talked about that earlier, right? So they don't need a brown paper, and that means that as soon as they submit their claim online or start their application, they can now apply for Ontario Works. We've heard from Toronto Employment Social Services that obviously they work in partnership with the shelter system, which is also administered by the city. However, there are two separate departments. And I just want to point that out. From the, the refugee claimants sort of have to also understand how the systems are set up and operated, which is not intuitive necessarily. And it's definitely not a one-stop shop. When it comes to Ontario Works, those refugee claimants who are in a shelter would be eligible for a basic amount. And I'm giving you an example of the amount, $495 per month for a family with 2 children under age of 17. They would not be provided with a shelter allowance because they're living in emergency shelter housing. Here, there is a bit of a Venn diagram which shows that sometimes things break down because of how they're administered. So when the City of Toronto shelters were bursting at the seams, the federal government did step in by moving some of the claimants to hotels where there were spaces, but they were in other municipalities. So Cornwall, Niagara Falls, etc. So they were literally busing them to those other municipalities. If they were already receiving Ontario Works is not a portable claim. It is, you get it from your municipal location. So there's some issues with now not receiving Ontario Works anymore and having to apply again in another municipality. The other piece is that the immigration is a federal responsibility. And so if I'm applying for things like work permits, etc., there are a third layer of systems that are interacting with kind of influencing the timelines, etc. So I just wanted to point that, you know, we hear a lot about the levels of government needing to work together, and indeed it is true, because they all impact on the claimant, and not always in a coordinated fashion. So I'll move on to the next slide, which talks about health. We just wanted to mention that refugee claimants do have health coverage. They have health coverage through interim federal health program. That coverage is triggered when the claimant receives acknowledgement of claim, so the white paper. The white paper actually has on it a statement that says that they're eligible, and that's their coverage. And they can take that coverage, that white paper, with them to a doctor in order to get the medical services they need. You can see here on the slide what some of the medical services that they're eligible for are. And I also just wanted to say that there have been changes to the interim federal health program. In 2012, during Prime Minister Harper's era, there were cuts made to it. In 2014, they were temporarily reinstated, but the recent studies show that there are issues with that interim federal health program. There are continued and new barriers to healthcare access and provision that emerge partly because of this, the cuts, and then reinstatement and the new processes in place. And those barriers are primarily lack of communication and awareness around what is covered, what isn't covered, how to access services, lack of continuity and comprehensive care, and also negative political discourse and some increased costs around the coverage. So just wanted to flag that, but there is coverage, and you can find out more information about it if you're interested. I'm not sure what my next slide is, so, or if I'm done, let's have a quick
But thank you, Sarna. You covered a lot of ground there, and I understand that while Toronto Employment and Social Services, or TES, which is housed under City of Toronto, could not be present in this session, they encouraged us to pass on any questions that you may have to them. So if you have any questions, particularly for TES, please write it in the chat below. Now, the next segment is actually Newcomer Settlement Program, NSP. So I'm going to turn the mic to Jennifer Rajashekar. She holds the position of Manager of Social Support Services at the Toronto Neighbourhood Organization, TNO, where she's also the key point of contact for the organization's social support services program. She has earned major awards for her work with newcomers and underrepresented groups. Her leadership in impactful projects and her role as co-chair for the Canadian Council of Refugees highlight her dedication to community service and change. Let me start with a bit of background. So one of the barriers in accessing settlement services for refugee claimants in Toronto is the opacity of funding streams that underlie them and the differences in eligibility among funders. A search for settlement service providers on IRCC website shows 355 service providers in Toronto. The same on Government of Ontario site shows 46 results, with significant overlap between the two. Nevertheless, there are significantly more IRCC-funded settlement services in Toronto than provincially funded ones. At a user level, it is impossible to differentiate between the two, as both are delivered by settlement staff, often working at the same types of organizations. Except that services funded by Ontario government and delivered under the name of NSP that you see here, Newcomer Settlement Program, are status agnostic, which means they're open to anyone with any immigration status or resident status in Toronto. Whereas IRCC-funded settlement services are restricted to those with PR, permanent resident status, or convention refugee status, and exclude refugee claimants. In September last year, Toronto North LIP reached out to all settlement services listed on the Ontario government website to interview them about whether they served refugee claimants and what their capacity was. We heard back from 4 agencies out of the 70 or whatever which were on our list. This further underscored the need to better understand which agencies receive NSP funding and can support claimants. So that list will also be in the email that I mentioned. So at the same time, the Ontario government announced a top of funding of $13.25 million to existing NSP service providers to help asylum claimants settle, achieve stability, and find employment support. In January 2024, we heard that the list of NSP service providers who receive additional funding was available. So we have tracked down that list and would be happy to share it with everyone today. As a manager of NSP programs at the Neighbourhood Organization, we would love to hear from you, Jennifer, about what supports are available to claimants through the NSP program and what recent funding top-up has meant for your capacity to serve claimants. And let me know if you would like to share your screen, or I can just put my screen on there.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I cannot put my camera on because of the internet connection in a rural area. So that's a part of the reason it's got picked out and back in. As a service provider, TNO is providing NSP services since 2004. We totally have a staff of 2.5 positions, in total. That's what we are serving. And what kind of service that we provide for NSP clients or refugees or Canadian. So when we say NSP, it's not only for refugees, also for Canadian citizens that's included. So we cannot forget that. People might be here for the 40 years, but they're still newcomers for some or the other reasons. They might not able to navigate the system, so we serve them as also. And then at TNO, we also comes under some of the international students. They become a refugee part of population as well. So NSP have people always say NSP is only serving refugees. It's not, but it's also provide for citizens as well. So it's a large number of clients with the very limited resources that we find. When it comes to NSP services, what we do as a settlement organization, we provide case management, need assessment, and help them navigate the system as usual for IRCC funded settlement counselors, how they work, similar things that we do. And then we also do orientations, information sessions, workshops. On top of that, and I think people might wonder, we assist them with applications. As you're aware of Bill 91, there are so many organizations are not supposed to everyone is aware of the Section 91, right? And the implications of that. And then there's a continuous effort with IRCC, how we can support, whether it's a refugee claimants or any settlement organization. So to your answer, the NSP clients, we receive a holistic approach with case management and information referral, as well as need assessment services that we provide. The changes and the top of funding that we got from provincial government is 1 position to serve throughout Ontario. Well, you could say particular areas, but it's very hard to serve with 1 person, so many people in need. At the moment, I'm in Durham area, there's no services in a very remote areas. And then I think the previous slide, somebody mentioned about putting people in Cornwall and you name a rural small town, which is no services, access to services. So that becomes a challenge. And also the complex of people who are staying in the shelters and the motels and all that. And you heard Belleville declared a state of emergency at one point because of the population. It's part of it also refugees, right? They were kicking them out from getting, they're captured 8 months is over or 6 months is over and they cannot find a job and housing. It's become a challenge. That's being said. So the funding will end this from January to December, which will be finishing that extra funding that government or the provincial government give it. But the on NSV, the other funding is March 25, 2025. So that's the services. It's keep, the game plan is, and hopefully something will happen, and the population is increasing. We need more resources. And we do help them with the work permit applications, anything with online application we support them with, because the services, we don't want them to be, they're already vulnerable, and then we don't want it to fall into a crap of consultation or immigrants consultants who charge a lot of money and mislead them sometimes. So we are very vigilant about that, and we support them, working along with community legal clinics who support them with immigration. But as you know, it's very thin, and sometimes you don't have rural areas, they don't have an immigration lawyer on board in the community legal services. So that's another challenge that with NSP clients. So pretty much, and as you know, what services are not available for them is, of course, the regular language classes. I know TDS, we offer ESL classes, but not in all the areas, because at one point, we don't have enough clients, so they closed down some of the areas where they were able to access. But in a very informal way, we do English conversation classes. There is no restriction. Anyone can join. Including visitors as well as refugee claimants, citizens, and some of our programs, women's program, there are no status requirement or any other catch attached to it. And we also provide a meaningful opportunities for refugee claimants or citizens to get volunteer opportunities, so they can be back on the skills, and instead of waiting for gaining experience, this is another chance for them to connect to the networks that we provide. So pretty much when you say what services be limited or not available, mainly there are a lot of requests for language classes, but it's not a regular language classes available in many areas. If you have, it's already full, or the limited transportation. And often they get, especially when the Ukrainian gets special support or something, they also get asked for, financial support, which is, we are not, we don't have any financial assistance to support them. So that's not available. And then we closely work with community health centers to navigate some of the challenges with the IHF, and it's a continuous effort from our part to educate others about the IHF, because so many family doctors are not aware of it, especially in the rural areas. They're not aware of the health coverage, what is included, or the labs are not aware of them. So that's a continued effort from our part to educating service providers or grassroots organizations who are helping, or faith-based organizations who are helping them navigate the system. So that's part of our NSP program that we continue to do capacity building, because we cannot be in anywhere and everywhere. So that's another part of NSP. So if anyone have any other questions or something, I'm happy to answer.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for highlighting what is available through this program. And of course, about language, we will be talking, as you mentioned, to TDSP more. So thank you for that. I'm going to turn to, I'm just going to do a quick time check. We are at 11:10. And yeah, thank you for being on time, everybody. So I'm going to turn to Malini Singh, who's the Manager of Newcomer Support Services at the Neighbourhood Organization. Now, a 2019 report of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration to the House of Commons on improving settlement services across Canada states that in many school districts in the province, the number of people who receive services who do not meet IRCC's criteria has been steadily increasing over the years, to the point that they outnumber the eligible newcomers. The witnesses interviewed for the report described describe how, in concrete terms, this means two students in the same class who have similar settlement needs are receiving different levels of services, and how distressing it is to support one student and their family more than the other. In IRCC Call for Proposals 2014 application guidelines for Swiss, let me just quickly change so you know what the full form is. It states that the program is targeted specifically for all newcomer students, regardless of immigration status, and their parents or guardians are eligible to be served. The guidelines state that this is due to the contribution of schools and other partners. This seems like a departure from IRCC's otherwise strict eligibility criteria, and perhaps an avenue through which vulnerable claimants can connect with settlement services they need. So Malini, is this a new development, or is the ability of Swiss workers to serve all newcomer students and their parents, regardless of immigration status, a known fact in the sector?
So I wouldn't say it's a known fact, but among all of the Swiss partners, it's together, that's how we've strived to enhance the program over time. So Swiss is settlement workers in schools. It is 25 years. 1999, it was established by our IRCC. They created the program then. TNO, we've been part of that program since the inception. We have 143 schools within our catchment area that we share with 5 other organizations in Toronto. The program, not the schools. The schools are, the 143 are under TNO. And within that, Swiss workers typically provide settlement assistance to all newcomer families, including refugee claimant families, regardless of immigration or residency status. The primary focus of the program is to support the integration of immigrant and refugee students and their families into the school system and broader community, as Farheen mentioned. Of course, this includes information referrals to various settlement needs, housing, employment, language, health services, etc., and essential programs specific to youth as well. So looking at resources along any type of enhancement that they need in English, ESL, homework clubs, that type of thing, mentorship programs as well. We work closely with our sector in terms of all of the partners that are involved in the educational system, so TDSB, TCDSB as well as the French schools we've been working with, and then other service providers around our area so that we could closely navigate all of the programming that we have so we can integrate that all together. We also provide advocacy and guidance to families navigating complex immigration process or seeking any legal assistance. So overall, we work with everyone. So this is something that we've tried to enhance and instill throughout the boards that we work with, and then all of the agencies we work with as well. When we look at refugee claimants that we're serving, the percentages and so forth, I know it was mentioned before. We work in adult schools specifically. So we have 4 adult schools we work in, City Adult Learning, Overland Learning Center, Jones Avenue, and Winston Churchill is another adult school within our catchment area. Within those 4 adult schools, 78% of the refugee claimants we see are coming from African countries, Eritrea, Sudan, and they're arriving via Saudi Arabia. So we mostly see students that are under 40 and mostly just so for support with a study permit. English level is quite high. It's level 7. And if they're not level 7 when assessed by those adult schools, we will send them back to the YMCA for further assessment. They mostly start in ESL B or C, and then of course move up the ladder so they can choose their educational path. And they'll always continue based on the confirmation email. So when that's given, then they can move forward in their studies. It's in addition to some of the programs, TDSB has made them eligible to apply for other programs while they are taking their regular schooling. So such as the PSW program, the Personal Support Worker program, is available at two of the schools. So they can take that in addition while they're building their educational and English levels. These newcomers are arriving with backgrounds in trades, mostly construction, electrical, mechanical, things of that nature. And of course, we see other refugee claimants as well. Highest of our additional 22% of refugee claimants are coming from Afghanistan and other countries. Mostly arriving from Dubai, India, and Pakistan, and they're arriving with very, very high levels and professional designations. One thing to note about that, these refugee claimants are not eligible for OSAP until they receive their notice of decision. So most of them are waiting for that notice of decision before they extend their studies onto colleges and universities, because then, of course, they would have to pay international student rates without waiting for that. So there has been a long wait time in between. So I know that has been an issue that has come up for most of our clients. And I think I've heard a lot of this mentioned already. I think in terms of the services refugee claimants can receive, of course, through TNO, they will always go through all of our extensive needs assessment, our information and orientation, linking them to any government community programs and needs that are available. We fill out all forms at TNO so we can support with any type of advocacy, and forms. A large thing for our refugee claimants is our food bank. So TNO, I mean, we have a food bank that we have out of our agency, but because our Swiss program is so large, we work with the food banks across Toronto. So that's really applicable to most of our clients. Of course, the language assessment, the IFH program that everyone is talking about, they're able to access that. Ontario Works, work permits, study permits, and we support in school registration. So school registration, I know when missing documents, it's difficult to get into the TDSB. So we support with that through our board, through our partnership with the board. So we're able to work with different members of the board in order to expedite that, because I know it was taking quite a while with some of our Afghans that were entering the school system. And then, of course, the dental card 17 and under the Healthy Smells program is essential to these newcomers that are arriving. So they've been utilizing that quite frequently. And I believe my colleague mentioned most of the rest, so I think I'm okay with that.
And I think there's a question somebody was asking about the volunteer on the chat. Yes, they can apply through online. There's they can fill out a form, which area they wanted to volunteer, and then they will take it from there. And I also wanted to give you for the settlement, the adult side of it so far, we serve around 2,300 clients since April 1st, 2023 till now. So just providing one-on-one services, case management with 2.5 staff and then the language that, so I just wanted to give you a snapshot of how many go through the process.
I think there's one question that I didn't see in terms of a specific needs assessment. We don't have a specific needs assessment for refugee claimants, but I know hopefully with the new CFP that's coming out, there will be, with the new contribution agreement, there will be, hopefully a new needs assessment that will come out for refugee claimants and those that are not different for Swiss specifically.
Yeah, there's another question. Sorry, I kind of lost it. Let me go back. Okay. Can Syrian parents who have arrived on a super visa apply for refugee status either at a port of entry or within Canada? Additionally, if they apply for social income support, will it have any impact on the children who sponsored them to come to Canada?
Good question. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that.
No worries. I think we can definitely archive it for
Yes.
questions, gaps in questions that are unanswered. And there's always, as I mentioned earlier, there's always going to be more and more questions because there's a lot of, it's complex. There's another question that I'll go related to language classes that I think would be good, like right after language training and adult education, because it's a good segue to this segment. And language learning is definitely given the top priority before refugee claimants can access jobs. So I'm going to turn to Minas Chinoy, who's the Community Service Supervisor of ESU, Essential Skills Upgrading at the Toronto District School Board, TDSB. She has over 20 years in this industry and has done a variety of training, apprenticeship, and now ESU programs. So Minas, could you share insights on eligibility and participation of refugee claimants in TDSB's ESL, English as Second Language, and adult education programs, their general profiles, and the support services that are available to them, including any access challenges and solutions?
Okay, good morning, good afternoon. It is still morning, right? So essential skills upgrading is part of community services. The board has divided us up into community services, which are free funded programs, and then we have continuing education, which would cover the ESL component, and adult education, which you keep seeing in the papers these days about, and that would be like Learn for Life and stuff like that. For us in community services, we have, which covers LINK, which covers essential skills upgrading, which would be the literacy program. And then we would have the programs that refugee claimants can get would be LINK, would be would be essential skills, would be hairstyling, and the employment programs. We have 7 agents, 7 centers for employment. They can't access our ELT because of the funding and the newcomer program, unfortunately. What makes essential skills upgrading is different is it's not a language class that would be covered by LINK or ESL. What makes it different is that it is more individualized. What makes us unique? You can come in, we have a lot of refugee claimants coming in who have high level of education, but just need to learn the snapshot of how to navigate writing a document, how to manage all of that, especially since we do offer digital upgrading too. So we offer 8 weeks of training for Excel, which is a full intensive and building on those skills, because many of them are highly educated, but never used Excel in their country of origin. We do a workshop in PowerPoint, which is used less, and Word. Those are the basic ones. And what makes our program different is because those ones, like I know labor education also offers training in that, is where we allow the learner to learn it's much more guided towards their learning. It's much more individualized. So the instructor sits there, talks to them, gets an idea of what they want. They are in a group setting. We don't have classes bigger than about 10 or 12, maximum 12. And we offer it online and in person, and it allows the learner to grow, learn, and gear the learning towards what they need. So that's what makes us unique. We are not for credit, and we try to get our learners and the refugee claimants to get what they want, to see the different training. We have people coming in to talk about different programming so that they can learn these services. We ourselves are unable to give all the information. As one of our centers, TNO, is our neighbor at the Don Mills location, and they do a fantastic job, so that always helps to have good support systems for the refugee claimants. For us, for any of our programs, they need to have a valid SIN number. Once they have a valid SIN number, nothing more is asked of them. They fill out the forms, they have an assessment to make sure that it works for them, and we offer TTC. We do not, unfortunately, have anything else that we can give them in terms of supports in that. We do offer a pre-apprenticeship program, which is something that is really an excellent program because it gives the learners for hairstyling. It is level 1. You need 2 levels to pass and get the exam to become a registered a hairstylist in Ontario. The pre-apprenticeship does level 1 training. It gives them their kit, their book, and it places them in a placement. They have a job developer who helps them and finds them a placement. They're guaranteed a placement, and it gets them to the next level. It's offered at Burnham Thorpe Collegiate, which is at East Mall, which is also where TDSB offers a PSW program. In the last 1 year, we've established Essential Skills Upgrading has worked with the PSW program at Burnham Thorpe to help them do most of our learners get upgrade their math skills so that they are ready for the PSW program. Because they weren't passing the entrance for the PSW, we've started classrooms which are geared to help them what they need to get and pass their math and to be successful at the PSW program, because we didn't want people to start and find that they weren't successful in that training. I think someone else mentioned, I think it was from TNO, that this is at other schools too, but right now our partnership is focused at Burnham Thorpe, and then we will move to the other locations because it's to support learners. Most of the people coming into our math classes are refugee claimants. Most of them are coming in from Africa. They've got degrees in other areas. However, they need something that will move them forward while they are waiting to get all their paperwork and everything assessed. For the PSW and for the hairstyling, we asked them to go and get their paperwork done in Peel region. I'm not sending them away from getting their assessment done in the city of Toronto or West or anything else. We just find that the Peel region charges the least amount and the caseworker pays for it. And their equivalency comes out to their high school. It allows them to feel, okay, back in, let's get the system and let's get the upgrading done. These are the free programs that are offered through TDSB, and we're trying to get people to what they need. There's another program that is offered through TDSB, which is free for the first year. Second year, I think it's a minimal of 1,500, which is the registered practical nurse. I have not put that in here, but that program, there's lots of rumors that maybe it may not. I mean, this year we are fine. We don't know what will happen next year and the government changes that happen. Barriers. Have I gone too fast or too slow? Any questions?
Perfect. There is a question that I was saving for this segment so that anybody can answer. So Anusia asks, are there free language classes offered by school boards in other jurisdictions in Ontario, for example, Simcoe County, etc.?
Essential Skills is offered in all over Ontario, which is math, upgrading your math, reading, writing. Usually, previously, we would need a CLB level of a 5 or a 6. That has been taken off. The government has just changed that. As of this year, we do not ask our learners their CLB level. However, I would say if they are a low level, they need to have at least because we want them to be empowered to improve a little bit and then move on. If it's essay writing, to do the ACE, to do writing, going back, most of our learners want to go into college or something like that, then that is what the ESU program is geared for.
I see. Thank you for answering that. Again, another time check quickly. We're at half an hour remaining in our session and we have 4 speakers to go. So again, thank you so much for...
Thank you, Serene.
Yeah, thank you for the presentations and answering all the questions in time. I'm going to move on to OW-funded skills training. Now, Claudia, she's the manager of employment services at Working Skills Center. She brings over a decade of dedication to supporting newcomers through innovative and holistic practice approaches. With a background in clinical psychology, so we're staying on that one, from University of Florence and further training at George Brown College. She's skilled in program design, teaching, and strategic planning. Claudia, could you shed some light on the profiles of immigrants participating in OW-funded, that is Ontario Works funded programs, and the types of training available to them at Working Skills Center?
For sure. Thank you so much, Fareen. I think the profile is being highlighted. I think across the sector, In Ontario, we've been seeing a lot of similar stats, but as you asked me to highlight sort of like the numbers, the number that you see here are actually coming from our database. So the majority of our clients actually come through Ontario Work. So our skills training and employment programs are all funded to Ontario Work. So we're not Employment Ontario funded. I've been working Skills Center for, I will say, about 13 years now. And the skills training is always being funded by Ontario Work. So the client that they came in between 2012, that was right about where I started, to 2019, so pre-COVID. As you see here, we're about 9.5% of all of our clients. While now, post-COVID, in the last few years, so 2019 to 2024, they jumped to 26%. I would say right now, most of our clients are refugee claimants in the program specifically. And in terms of the level of education and the location, it's very similar to what was highlighted by Daryl and by TNO. Like we see a lot of probably 50% of more coming from African countries, and 75% of all the clients that we serve have either a college or a university degree. So bachelor, in some cases in Africa, they will call it sort of like a higher diploma. So it's a couple of years diploma compared to a university degrees. And again, the barriers are systemic, individual barriers. We do an assessment, a need assessment, pretty much like TNO highlighted. So we usually try to do an individual assessment to make sure that they're situated in some way, shape, or form, and that we can actually provide some settlement support. Our team is not a big team. We are a small organization. We have about 10 to 12 people. Ansuya is actually part of our team. She's our settlement coordinator. But we try to kind of like figure out, the housing, the childcare, the technical support that they have available. So do they have a computer? Did they have used a computer before? Their skill level when it comes to language and communication and the essential skills for sure. We specialize in skills training, as you can see from here, and we do mainly admin and accounting training, so office training. So if you move to the next slide, I can maybe give a little bit of more an idea. So overall, you asked me to highlight the program that refugee claimants are eligible for. In terms of the programs that we offer at the moment, almost all of them are open to refugee claimants. So for example, the Microsoft Office Specialist, that is the first one up there on top, the client profile is mainly women. So we decided to target that to women that have experience or education in administration. And they can be Canadian, they can be permanent resident, they can be refugee claimants. Recently, in the last couple of years, I actually was able to accept people without the work permit, knowing which point of the process they were in, because we knew that they would receive the work permit by the time the training was over. So that specific training is 16 weeks, is in person, Monday to Friday, 9 to 4. They have access to computer, they have access to all the software, and we specialize in business admin and medical admin. So depending, again, on the need assessment, we will pick the candidates that have, I would say, the most statistical options of success for employment. So in 2023, so last year, 90% to 100% ended up in paid employment or in an internship inside the 6 months of the completion of the program. So either administrative assistant, receptionist, medical receptionist, etc. The essential skills for office professional, that is the second one on the list, it's mainly sort of like a career planning section. So the clients that are ended up in that type of program are males or females, and they're actually in a position in which they either recently came to Canada and they kind of like try to get situated in terms of the labor market. So they have an idea of the skills that they have to offer, but they really don't know much about the labor market in Canada or in Toronto and where they can actually transfer their skill set. So again, everybody gets assessed in terms of their skill level, the language, and the background that they're bringing to the table in terms of what can it be, what it can evolve into, to kind of like get them situated in the labor market and at least to start a career. Some of this will also be refugee claimants that don't have a work permit. In that case, we will probably help them plan not only for employment, but also for additional training. So some of these clients will also get referred to other training in the community to make sure that we address what they want to achieve in career. The SAP Finance, that is, sorry, Farin. So also there is the SAP Finance that is for internationally trained professional. A lot of this, again, are refugee claimants, and this is a specific training in accounting. SAP is a software, is an acronym for System Application Products. And the finance section of it is what you will use at the City of Toronto or Loblaws or big organization to kind of like track products and invoices, account receivable and account payable. I don't want to bore you, but a lot of our refugee claimants that decide to apply for that position have a background in accounting. But overall, for all the programs, you need to be referred by an Ontario Work caseworker, and they will receive benefits and support in terms of funding to participate in the program. So technical support and living expenses as well. And the second part, Farin, if you want to switch over, I know we're over time. These are also online courses that are free for everybody to attend. I linked the registration link for Farin to share after. So these are sort of like essential skills training, digital literacy, communication, conversation classes that are provincially funded and that are done in partnership with our senior program as well by the settlement department. Yeah. So thank you, Farin.
Thanks so much, Claudia. And I know there's a lot of questions in the chat for you. To be mindful of everyone's time, what we can do is maybe ask those questions to you later and you can send me those answers and I can share it with the email, the comprehensive email that I would be sending to all the attendees. All right, so I'm going to move on to Daryl actually to talk about hiring events or hiring programs that Jumpstart does. And I know that Jumpstart Refugee Talent has been pivotal in bridging the gap between forcibly displaced people and meaningful employment, as you emphasized. So could you highlight some of the core services that Jumpstart offers to claimants and the impacts of initiatives such as Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable and hiring events? Sorry, I'm just going to move on to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Farheen. So let me preamble this by saying I came to Jumpstart with 30 years of experience in the corporate sector, working in Shanghai, in London, in New York, and mostly in Toronto. And I was on the board of Jumpstart for 4 years before deciding to take a very purposeful role in employment, because this is one of the world's biggest problems. I mean, the stat you've heard today, we have 100 million people forcibly displaced around the world. That's 3 times the population of Canada. There's only a sliver of that coming into Canada, but still we have systemic challenges with dealing with how to integrate them successfully into our economy. So one of the things we've experimented with in collaboration with the Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable, which I used to co-chair with Senator Ratna Omidvar, is this hiring event model. And I've popped into the chat a lot of details here as well as links. It is very different than the traditional job fairs and career fairs that, there's literally hundreds of them happening around the country. The main difference is outcomes. We're always looking at outcomes. And the refugees that attend these hiring events, there's a 50 to 85% success rate in terms of employment outcomes versus a 3 to 5%, what we hear anecdotally from the job fairs and career fairs that are held across the country. So Jumpstart has been selected by the roundtable to host some introductory workshops, like how to host your own refugee hiring event. And we're running these workshops on April 24th, May 1st, and May 8th. So the offer is to any settlement agency that is curious to find out more about how to run one of these as compared to a traditional job fair or career fair. You're more than welcome to sign up with the registration link in the chat. This is really a collaboration that spans really effectively employers, local settlement agencies. This is a very local event, even though it's a national roundtable that's been tweaking the model. And last but not least, governments, both the municipal and provincial governments, wherever the location is being held. Last year, we held 2 of these events, one in Moncton, New Brunswick, and one in the GTA in October of last year. Hugely successful. My wish is that settlement agencies across the country start to adopt, if not in entirety, the model itself, but maybe just cherry pick pieces that would work for your existing offerings to your refugee clients. I'll stop there and maybe ask if anyone has any questions.
I'm just going over quickly to the chats for any questions that may be there. Is there a maximum number of courses one can take up to a year? Okay, that's for Working Skills Center. But yeah, if you have any questions, please write it in the chat or send it over to Daryl or us. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next. Daryl, you need to share something, right? I'm sorry, I just started sharing my screen accidentally.
No, I've got everything in the chat right now with the table that I planned on sharing.
Okay.
And maybe I'll briefly describe how the model is different. The settlement agency takes on a lot more work than they would with a traditional job fair or career fair. And what that work is involved in doing is engaging the employers up front. The employers it's not a free-for-all for any employer that wants to participate. The minimum criteria is they have to have an open job requisition that they're hiring for. Multiple would be great, but at least one. And that hiring need needs to be there apparent on event day. If they just want to come there to showcase how wonderful their company is and do a quick chat with the participants about apply on our career website, that's not the employer we need for these events. We're looking for employers that are actually hiring. The settlement agencies, their job in this multi-agency event is to pre-screen refugee talent for the JDs that are there for event day. And the refugee candidates that are selected for interviews, these are actual interviews on event day. Pre-screened candidates get 20 to 30 minutes with the employer, and it's either their talent acquisition or the hiring manager that is there on event day. And the roundtable asks for 2 outcomes from the employers. One is you hire on the spot because these have been pre-screened and they're high quality candidates, or 2, some companies can't hire on the spot. They have multiple rounds of interview processes, and we understand that. But if the candidate is good enough, then to pass that candidate through to the second round of their interview screening process. So we count those 2 as success. And if they feel like the refugee candidate, it's not a good fit for whatever reason, we ask them to give some real-time constructive feedback to that newly arrived refugee, which is golden when you are new to the system and don't understand what a Canadian interview should look like. So that feedback that's given by the employer is then taken by the refugee to what we call Coach's Corner during the event, which is staffed by employment counselors from all the participating settlement agencies. And those employment counselors give some really constructive coaching to that individual refugee about things they might want to consider doing differently for their next interview. And this piece, even though it doesn't have a direct result, we know from our feedback from participating refugees, the capacity building component in terms of how to deal with your next Canadian interview was huge. And we hear back from them months later to say, thank you so much, because I didn't get the job on the event day, but I interviewed down the road with employer X and managed to get the job, but really appreciated the honest feedback, which refugees hardly ever get. They typically get generic or no response, right? Which is, I'm sorry, there were just other more skilled candidates that applied for the job, which is really hard to do anything with if you're trying to learn this system. So I see, Lila, you have your hand up. You're on mute, Lila.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Thank you, Daryl. My question is, I think, specific general to whoever can answer me the best. I think Claudia, maybe. So I work with Afghan refugees from Afghan women organizations, and refugees and newcomers, I can say all kind of clients we have. And as Fareen mentioned, we have a very high level educated people who come in with the English language barrier, and we also have like a very intermediate and a basic kind of clients who are here due to the country collapse, and they are looking for basic jobs. So out of which a lot of people who are male refugees or newcomers, they look for trade kind of skills like, you know, bus drivers, truck driver, like school bus drivers. And when I go on Ontario Work Training Program or anywhere that I'm looking for, those facilities are either very minimal or not available. And a lot of our community services are not sponsoring. So it's very expensive, and it is in demand. And I know that for sure, because a lot of clients are looking for it, but we cannot really tell them, okay, here is where you can go and where this community service will sponsor you, or the government is sponsoring or something like that. So is there any source, or is there any program that can help these newcomers? So that's my question, and maybe I'm not aware of it, or maybe I don't look in a specific in a good source that I should be looking.
That's a great question, Lila. And I know, Claudia, you're getting ready to answer it, which is great. But could I ask for you to put some notes in the chat for Lila? Just because we do have two other presenters that we know have really amazing information, and we want to get to them. Lila, that's an excellent question. So if anybody else has answer to that, please do put it in chat for Lila. But we would love to hear from Monica from York University about access to bridging programs for refugee claimants. And also, just to add, Lila, TNO offers some excellent trade pathways programs for newcomers. I'm not sure what the status requirements are, but that's also a good organization to follow up with. But for now, welcome, Monica.
Thanks, Serna, and I'll try and be quick for everyone. So my name is Monica Brennan. I'm the Associate Director of the IEP Bridging Programs here at York University. We've been around for 15 years, and our programs are embedded in the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies. So students take courses with us, and they get credits for these courses. They're not continuing education courses, but actual credit courses run through the university and our faculty. So we've been running these programs for a long time. Our goal of our programs is, of course, to support skilled immigrants, mainly to overcome barriers to the workforce. So while they are studying at the university, we have supports around the program, and our goal is to help them study in a way that helps them to get back to their career in Canada, matching their professional field before arriving. And so our focus is on language, growing knowledge and skills relating to their profession in the workforce here in Canada. Also assisting people to navigate hiring processes, and integrating them into the supports at the university as well as the community. And so we work with a lot of other community services. So our goal is to help people overcome these different challenges that they're facing when they're trying to succeed in the labor market here in Canada. So we run 3 programs. One of them is IRCC funded, so is not eligible for refugee claimants. It's our foundation program. It's a free program. People study here for 1 term, take 2 courses, and get free language support and other activities. I'm going to speak now about our certificate in Canadian business, our certificate in information technology. These are funded by the Ontario government and our Ontario Bridge training programs, accessible to refugee claimants. As one category of people can participate in the program. And we've had lots of success working with lots of refugee claimants in our programs. So this is the admissions criteria generally for our bridge training programs and others. And as you can see, this is our overall criteria, and specifically in the certificate program, refugee claimants with work permits are eligible to apply. They need to have, similar to other bridge training programs, a good work-ready language level. That's CLB. We don't do IELTS. It's not like the university application. You're coming through us. And so we're looking for the same things bridge training programs are looking for. CLB 7 or above. You need to have a recognized non-Canadian bachelor's degree, which we work with you to be able to assess. And you need to have worked in your profession before arriving in Canada, and that you have a goal here, obviously, to reach for your career. So I've put in the chat the link to the Ontario Bridge training programs. I'm going to talk about my program, but I want you to know that there are other programs which refugee claimants are also eligible for. And this is most programs under the Ontario Bridge training program. And I put the link in the chat. Our refugee claimants with work permits are eligible to do these programs. And can be supported to access the financial supports to help them complete these programs. And so I really encourage you, if my program is in the background, you look there. There are lots of different occupational backgrounds in other programs available in colleges, the community, and other universities across Ontario funded under this program. Okay, and that's, you know, just there's a list of quite a few programs, and you can see that there's different backgrounds: media, communications, finance, computing, medical backgrounds as well. So what our certificate is it's an 8-credit course certificate. People come out of it with a university professional certificate, either in Canadian business or information technology. They take some core courses that are exclusively for internationally educated professionals. We run as a cohort with the students. So they do language prep for 1 month before they enter the credit courses. Excuse me. And that's run 2 nights a week online. So people don't have to be able to come during the day. This is a part-time program. People take their courses in the evening. Some courses are available online. And so people don't need to study full time. They can work and do our program at the same time. Bridge training is accessible to people who are either unemployed or underemployed. And so if people are in survival jobs or not jobs that are not at their level, they're eligible for these programs. And so we designed ours so that people could work and study at the same time if they needed to. So they'll do 3 foundation courses focused on things like business communication, business management skills, business law and ethics, and then they take 5 courses that are integrated into different departments within the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies that match their professional fields. And then that creates a lot of variety because people are able to choose from the courses that best match their professional background. One area we have big success in is a lot of the courses in our program are CPA eligible. So you can take 6 CPA eligible courses if you want to be an accountant, and they'll be funded through OBPAP if you're eligible for the bursary. And that means you can take them through the university faculty and they're pre-approved CPA courses. So on the left, I have some comments as to why some of the recent refugee claimants chose our program. And really, generally right now, we have 9% of the participants who've came in under our recent contract with the government are refugee claimants of the people who've entered the program. Another 12% are refugees and protected persons. So a good 20% of the people in our program are moving through different stages of the refugee process. And I have to say, you know, I really, I welcome those clients to our program. It's important to me that we give access to refugee claimants because I see that they don't have access elsewhere. And a lot of people come to us, a lot of people hear about our program through other people they know. So there's a lot of referrals through their own communities to our program. But they also come through some people in Ontario Works or community agencies or from the Y if they've been language assessed. But we do like to reach out to all community organizations and encourage people to connect with us. We'll do info sessions with you for your clients to explain the program to your clients. I'm happy to do an info webinar whenever it can be helpful to you or anybody in your community. So I've definitely found also refugee claimants join our program as claimants and can move through it to their new journey. Quickly, maybe most people who come to us, because to be eligible, you have to have a university degree. So most everybody who enters our program has a university degree before arriving in Canada. And 40% of those people who are refugee claimants have come to us in the last program with master's or postgraduate education. So you can see that the refugee and refugee claimant population are very well educated people often. And I've had some people come to me, tell me stories that really break my heart. Like they went somewhere and they were told they couldn't get into university and so they should go back to high school in Canada. You know, and these are people who've struggled to complete their university degrees abroad. So I really encourage you to make sure if you're looking for programs to make sure that you can try and find people university education access if that's what they're looking for. To enter our program, again, they need CLB. I know sometimes people have challenges with language assessment and document assessment, and we work with people. If they apply, we then connect them if they need to CLB. They can do the CLB OSA while they're applying and waiting for their CLB test so that we don't exclude them. We look at their online test and then wait for their document in language. We do the same with official documentation. If people can provide us with a copy of their degree and transcripts, we provide what is a preliminary access to our program while we work with them and connect them to West Gateway and try and work with them to get their official document shared with us from their home country if it's possible, or work with West Gateway to be assessed to join our program. So we know that for refugees and refugees claimants, documents, official documents can be an issue. And so we do still work with people to try and provide them with access while we work with them together to get those conditions cleared from their acceptance. So they usually work with us for a term in the program to see if we can manage to clear that academic documentation issue. Of course, people, you know, in terms of challenges, sometimes people face a lot of stress. They're going through the claimant process and they experience that while going through our program. They can access, as part-time students at the university, free counseling as part of being a student at the university and other supports here. And we like to connect them also to other programs. And we know sometimes it takes time to get the work permit, so we work with them. I know I don't have much more time, so I think one of the most important, I'll just skip over my program. You can look at it on the website.
We'll share that with everyone, so definitely.
So these are the different streams of the program in IT and in business, accounting, finance, management, marketing, or public admin government. And I know a lot of asylum seekers come with that supports in government. So the one thing I want to flag to you is people who enter our program, the university provides a bursary to cover the first 2 courses that they do through the certificate program. So they have that term where they have free education while we're trying to assess documents and things. And then they can apply for the Ontario Bridge Training Bursary, which currently in the current contract covered the remaining 6 courses at the university. The fees are $720 domestic, and the bursary covers all of the fees of 6 courses at that rate. So it's an amazing opportunity for people who are refugee claimants to be able to access university education. And there's a lot of stories on our website, so you can have a quick look at those. And we've had a number of refugee claimants who've gone through it, and really their experiences meeting people, building their networks, and getting that fit to the labor market and finding employment. So it's certainly possible for people to get back to their field as they need. I've put another link in the chat, and this isn't my program, but I did want to highlight it to people. There is a program also called Sanctuary Scholars at York University and at Toronto Metropolitan University, which helps people with precarious immigration status of all different types, as well as refugee claimants, enter the university at domestic fee rates and get support to be able to take courses. So again, if people want to enter the university, they can go through the Sanctuary Scholars Program while they're refugee claimants in either of these institutions and get support. So I've put the link to Sanctuary Scholars at York in the chat, and you can reach out to them if you want more information on the program. And I guess finally, I just want to flag there are also bursaries through the Refugee Studies Department at the university to support asylum seekers in education. So I hope that gives you a sense of different opportunities. And I encourage you to, work with your clients to access education and support that really gives them that help to access employment. Seen lots of very successful refugee claimants come through my program and get great jobs, and it's certainly possible for people. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Monica, for making these programs accessible for claimants. I'm just going to echo the comments here. And I'm going to apologize that this is getting over time. There has been a lot of last-minute changes while organizing this panel, and it is a very complex topic. So I was struggling between balancing between, respecting everyone's time, which is important, but also it's really important to hear the Employment Ontario perspective. And Vanessa was, able to last minute agree to be on the panel and, talk about, the Employment Ontario perspective. So I'm going to hand it over to her. I'm also going to quickly talk about the evaluation form that we have. So please share your questions in the chat and thoughts in the evaluation form that I'm sharing in the chat. Quickly introducing Vanessa. She is the coordinator of healthcare connections at Access Employment and has over 11 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. As you navigate the critical role of Employment Ontario, or EO, in supporting refugee claimants, it's important to understand both the access and impact of these services. So Vanessa, could you describe how claimants in Toronto or GTA can engage with EO, the profile of those benefiting from these services, and the effectiveness of the common assessment tool process?
Sure, no problem. Thank you, everybody, for having me over. This is such interesting information, and I really, really like, connecting with you all. So I'm here to talk about Employment Ontario, which is one of our biggest programs at Access Employment. Access Employment has many different programs, but, talking about the EO program is just, enough to fill the space I have right now. So what I'm going to say is that in order to be eligible for that program, you can be a refugee claimant. However, you need to have a work permit that is valid for at least 1 year, right? At that point, we would actually register you as one of our clients, and you would have access to an employment consultant who will work with you in finding out what steps can be taken towards you meeting your employment goal. We have many different programs, so the refugee claimant population that we serve has not just one profile. We serve many different people. EO program is for somebody who maybe is not like an internationally trained professional that would just come into the country and now they're looking for a job. They have their work permit. So what they can do is go to one of our employment consultants who will help them then tailor the resume and get some interview preparation. And most of them get employed by EO. If the international if the international trainer is professionally trained, then they can go maybe to one of our bridging programs as well. A lot of them, or most of them, actually enable refugee claimants to be part of the cohorts and of the program. We also have some new programs that are dedicated to people who have co-ed visas, and also people, maybe if Farheen, could I just share my screen with a little presentation that I kind of made?
Absolutely. You have the co-host permission, and let me know if you can share.
Okay, please. I'm going to share now, okay? Okay.
Vanessa, you're muted.
I am so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. At Access Employment, we thrive on helping people find employment, and that actually also refers to refugee claimants, conventional refugees, and we do this through several programs and several services we can offer. Just EO is our biggest program. Eligible to work in Canada. So for that, we serve PR, Canadian citizen, or refugee claimants with a valid work permit. And we help them with the resume and other barriers to employment that they would have. Okay, you also have to be not in school or not working full-time, so 20 hours per week or less to be eligible for the program, and you can reach us at any of our 8 locations throughout Toronto. Okay, we also have a program called Connecting Afghan Refugees to Good Jobs program. It's for permanent residents, refugee claimants, and conventional refugees. You can visit our website for more information about the upcoming cohorts. We also have the Connecting Ukrainian Refugees to Good Jobs program. There's no eligibility criteria. All you will need to show is just your co-ed visa. And this is a program that is unscheduled, so there's no class time. They just help promote you in the community to different employers and help you obtain different interviews so that you can get a job. There's no OVPT and no fee as well for the program. Then we have the Connecting Newcomers to Good Jobs, Asylum Claimants Stream 4. This is for asylum claimants with 1 year work permit, at least 1 year of work experience outside of Canada, and a language proficiency of 6 or more. The dates are March. We have one upcoming cohort at the end of April to May, June, July, September to October, and there's also no fee for that program. We also offer programs for youth that are refugee claimants. They just need to have, again, that brown paper that we hear so much about, and a work permit for at least 1 year, and there's no fee for them. And you can visit our website for upcoming events or register for a information session. We have information sessions for all our events before they start. And we also have the Youth Job Connections for the summer. And this is also for refugee claimants who have a valid work permit. And what it does, it gives them classes regarding job search skills. And it also offers them a placement. They need to have only moderate English language proficiency. And again, there is no fee for those services. So as you can see, we have many services at Access Employment that can reach refugee claimants as well as conventional refugees. If you have any questions, please just visit our website or feel free to connect with me. And Farheen, I can send you the slides.
Thank you
so you
so
can
much.
share with the group.
Absolutely. I will be making a note of all the attendees who are present here, and I'm going to share the presentations that you guys shared, as well as the contacts that you guys mentioned here. Let me just stop. Could you stop sharing the screen? Oh yeah,
I'm so sorry.
No. I just wanted to see everybody and the chat. Okay. Thank you so much. I know that we are over time completely. I'm going to take responsibility for that. For one, doing it on a Monday morning. For two, just for, kind of going over the time. And again, it is a complex topic, as I mentioned. So thank you so much for being a part of today's meeting. As we talked about different areas, different sectors, or different arenas that have been coming together to help or support or make supports more accessible for refugee claimants. We also saw that the national increase in demand for refugee claimant services has been reflected in all the organizations that were represented here today. So, this is definitely, this is not, it doesn't subsume everything, this session, even though it was over 2 hours long, but it's a very important start of a conversation, or at least part of that conversation that we need to have in the changing times and the changing landscape that we have today. So thank you to all the panelists and everybody present here for making this possible.